Hello and welcome to our how-to video on managed rates and mission control. You may need to use a managed rates feature in a number of different situations. For example, when an employee is promoted and their rates go up, so you may need to update their billable hourly rate or their cost hourly rate accordingly. If you update it from within their role record, the new rate will be used. However, all the previous projects that are already billed will also be using this new rate that you've specified on their role record. So this may result in an inaccurate representation of your data where billing event amounts may be different from the financial amounts that are shown on the project, the value fields. And so this is where the manage rates feature comes in. The manage rates feature uses the rate adjustment object to allow us to override the rates based on a number of different scenarios that we have here. The rate adjustment feature or the manage rates feature will allow you to create a set of rates, that is a billable and cost rate, for a specified time period. And these rate adjustment records are created by the manage rates page. And this is accessible from either the project record or the role record. So there's 5 different scenarios that we have. So the first 3, which is the project, the role-based override, and the skill-based override, for these 3 to access them, you need to access them from the manage rates page on the project record. So for the first one, project, this scenario will occur when you're using the standard billing rate or the standard cost rate, and this would allow you to adjust the rates used on that specific project. So for role-based override, so this is when you're using role-based billing rate or role-based cost rate, and this would allow you to override the rates for an individual role on a specific project. For skill-based override, this is when you're using skill-based billing rate or cost rate, and this would allow you to override the rates for an individual role for a specific skill that is used on a action in a specific project. The next one are role-based. So this is accessible from within the role record, and this is when you're using the role-based billing rate or cost rate on the project, and this would allow you to adjust the rates for an individual, and this would apply to all projects that use those role-based billing rate or role-based cost rate. And finally, skill-based, this is also accessible from the role record. So this is when you're using skill-based billing rate or skill-based cost rate. So this would allow you to adjust the rates for an individual role when using a specific skill across all projects. So a key point to note here for the last 2 options here, for the role-based and the skill-based rate adjustments, is that they will apply across all projects unless that project has a corresponding override option. So for example, if I've applied role-based rate adjustment, and at the same time I've also applied a role-based override, so on a project, if both of those rates overlap, the role-based override will take priority. The same can be said for a skill-based override. Let's have a look at how these work within mission control. All right, let's start by going over the project rate adjustment scenario. So what I've done is created a project which has 1 milestone, 2 actions, 2 different action owners, and both of those actions have 2 billable hours scheduled for them, so the total of 4 hours. And I've cloned that template 3 times. So I've got 1 project which has the standard billing rate and the standard cost rate. Similarly, for the skill-based, I've got skill-based billing rate and skill-based cost rate. And lastly, for the role-based project, I've got the role-based billing rate and role-based cost rate. So back on the first one over here, which is using the standard rates, I've added in a billable day rate and a cost day rate of 1600 and 600 accordingly. And based on the hours per day value, so it's taking 1600 divided by 8 and giving me 200 as the billable hourly rate, and 600 divided by 8, and that's giving me 75 hourly rate for the cost. So a total of 4 hours, so 2 and 2 from both actions. And so if you take 200 times 4, that's giving me 800, and 75 times 4, that's giving me 300. Since this is the standard project, it's using the rates on the project over here, and not based on the action owners or contributors. So the hours completed value billable and the hours completed value cost fields are not populated yet because we haven't added any time logs yet, and we'll do that once we create a rate adjustment record. So let's open up this project here. We'll expand the milestone here. So I've got 1 milestone, 2 actions, 2 different action owners, and 2 hours each. So to access the managed rates or the rate adjustment for a project which has standard billing rate or standard cost rate, you can do so by using the manage rates button, which is over here. You may need to add this to the page layout. So just make sure this is available on the page layout. So you can choose to update the hourly rates directly from here, and they're going to apply indefinitely. So these two fields from here, or you can choose to specify a date range. So I'm going to say that I need the rate adjustment that I'm just about to add now, that I'm just going to add now, to be on the 1st, start from the 1st and end on the 30th of September. And I'm going to say the billable hourly rate is going to be 250 and the cost hourly rate is going to be 100. And I can click on add and then click on save. That's all for now. Once you've made any rate adjustment, we recommend running a financials recalculation just to make sure that you have an accurate view. So what you can do is edit the project record and make sure that the force financials recalculation field is checked as true, and click save. So once this is true, it's going to run a process in the background where it's going to recalculate all of those value fields for you, and you'll know once it's complete when this is unchecked. So just make sure that you have refreshed the page once. Go back here, go to edit, and you'll see that it's unchecked. So once it's unchecked, you'll know that you're good to go. So now we've got the rate adjustment done. We can add a time log. So I'm going to add one hour time log, which is going to be inside the date range that we just added for the rate adjustment. So we'll see the difference. So 28 September falls in the date range that we specified. So just log time, and then I'm going to set the date to be outside the date range, 31st August, and then 1 hour, and then log time. All right, so now that we have the time log for it, let's go back into the list view and see those values update. So we've got scheduled value is going to use the new rate adjustment. So that's going to be 250 times 4, and that's giving us 1000. And then we had 100 for the cost hourly rate, so that's 100 times 4, and that's giving us 400. Regarding the hours completed value billable and hours completed value cost, so we had a time log which was outside the date range. So 1 hour that's going to be using 200, so 200 times 1 plus, and 1 hour that's inside the date range, so that's 250. So 200 times 1 plus 250 times 1, and that's giving us 450. And then for the hours completed value cost field, we had 100 for the time log that falls within the date range, and one that doesn't. So that's 100 times 1 plus 75 times 1, and that's giving us 175. So that's showing up correctly. All right, moving on to the next rate adjustment scenario, which is the role-based rate adjustment. For that, I've got a project here which has the role-based billing rate and role-based cost rate. This project will not need the day rates because it's going to be picking up the rates from the action owners and project members for the time logs. So let's open up this project over here and look at the action owners, and open up the roles tab from here. So this project has one action has the Arthur as the action owner, and the other action has Omar as the action owner. So both of them have 2 hours. So if I go over here and open up the role record for Omar and for Arthur, so Omar has a billable hourly rate of 200 and Arthur has a billable hourly rate of 175. So 200 times 2 and plus 175 times 2, that gives us a total of 750 for the hour scheduled value billable. Similarly, Omar has a cost hourly rate of 85 and Arthur has a cost hourly rate of 75. So 85 times 2 plus 75 times 2, that gives us a our scheduled value of 320. So that's showing up correctly. Now if we go back onto the role record, we'll be able to do the rate adjustments. So to access the rate adjustment for the role-based scenario, you need to go into the role record and click on the Manage Rates button. Again, just make sure this is added to the page layout. So once you're over here, you'll see two tabs here, role-based and skill-based. So for the role-based scenario, just make sure you're on the role-based tab. So just expand if you want to enter in a date range. So let's say again, from the 1st of September till 30th, I'm going to be having a 250 billable hourly rate and 100 as my cost hourly rate. Just click on add, click on save. And for Arthur, go to manage rates. So he has a, let's say again, 1st to the 30th, and he's going to be having 200 as his billable hourly rate and 85 as his cost hourly rate. So just click on add and then save. So we can open up their rate adjustment records as well along with this, just so it's easier for us to compare the values. Go to rate adjustment. So there's one for Arthur and there's one for Omar. So you'll see the rates are 200, 85, 250, 100. Let's just open those up. Arthur and Omar, and we can close this for now. So now going back to the project, you'll want to make sure that you've run the force financials recalculation. So again, just edit the project and make sure this is true. Click save. Refresh the page. Edit the project record again just to make sure the check is gone. Yep. Once that's done, you can lock time to some of those actions and we'll see those changes. So this time I'm going to create one for Arthur. Again, both of them inside the date range that we've specified, but it'll be two different action owners and we'll see both of those different rates apply. So one is for Omar. Actually, this is the Arthur's action, so I'm just going to say Arthur and 1 hour lock time. So that's done for Arthur, and now for Omar. So I've got, again, within the date range, hours completed is 1 lock time. So now back to the project over here. Let's refresh this just to make sure everything is showing up correctly. So now we have the value fields updated for us. So if we look at the updated rates, so it was 200 for Arthur and 250 for Omar. So that's 200 times 2 plus 250 times 2. That adds up to 900. So the scheduled value billable is showing up correctly. Now our scheduled value cost. So it was, let's go back onto the rate adjustment just to make sure. So it was 100 for Omar and it was 85 for Arthur. So go back here. So that adds up to 370. So that's showing up correctly over here. Now we added 2 time logs. So if you look at the billable hourly rates, so that's 250 and 200. So 250 times 1 hour, which is 250, plus 200 times 1 hour, that's 200. So 250 plus 200, that adds up to 450, and that's showing up correctly. And it's 185. So 100 plus 85, again, it's showing up correctly over here, 185. Moving on to the next rate adjustment scenario, which is the role-based override. So with the role-based override rate adjustment, you can choose to update the rates for your role on a specific project. So if we've got this role-based project over here, and we'll be able to access the role-based override from within the project record. So just open up the project record, go in here, go to manage rates. So earlier when we were on the standard billing rate and standard cost rate project, the very first one that we just covered, it presented us with the standard tab, whereas when we have the project rate set to billing rate and cost rate set to role-based, it's gonna present us with the role-based override tab. The key point to note here with the role-based override rate adjustment is that the role-based override override rate adjustment records will take priority over the role-based rate adjustment records. So for the same project, we had created these two rate adjustment records, which were role-based, but now we're creating role-based override rate adjustment records. So, and these are only going to apply on this specific project. And if the date range for these rate adjustment records overlap with the date range for these role-based rate adjustment records, the role-based override rate adjustment records will take priority. So we'll have a look at that once we add in those rates. So I'm going to say I need these rates to be indefinite for the specific project. So 250 over here, and let's say, so actually these rates that you see here are from the role record, not from the rate adjustment records. So 250 was the original rate that we had added to the rate adjustment. So yeah, 250 over here. If I go back here and update this to, let's say, 275, and this was set to 100 in the previous rate adjustment. So let's say this is 125. So this was set to 200 previously. So let's say this is 225, and this was set to 85. So now let's say this is 100. And once that's done, we can click save. I'm gonna open this back up one more time before after I force the financials recalculation. Save. Go back into manage rates so we can just see those rates easily. Go back to projects here, refresh this just to make sure everything's good. All right, so for the scheduled value billable and cost fields, we have these role-based override are going to take priority, and that's going to give us 1000, and that's reflected over here correctly. So for the cost rate, we've got 125 here and 100, so both of those times 2, and that's going to give us 450, and we can see that over here, 450. Now onto the completed value. So again, it's going to use the 275 times 1 plus 225 times 1, and that's going to add up to 500. So we've seen the completed value billable as 500, and the cost value will be 125 times 1 and 100 times 1, which is going to be 225, and that's reflected over here correctly. So again, the role-based override rate adjustment records are taking priority over the role-based rate adjustment records. Let's have a look at those rate adjustment records that we just created. Just close this. So as you see, we have 4 role-based or similar rate adjustment records that we've created, and those are specific to these 2 projects, and it's only going to apply on those 2 projects, and the rates will apply indefinitely. So it doesn't take into account these 2 rates because these 2 take into account indefinitely. Close this, go back into project. Moving on to the skill-based rate adjustment, for which we'll be using the second project here, which has the skill-based for the billing rate and skill-based for the cost rate as well. So we'll open this one up. So I've got 2 actions here again, 2 different action owners, but both of those actions have different skills. So if I open up data export, this data export action has the data export skill, whereas the data import has the data import skill. The action owner is Omer, so it's going to be using Omer's skill assignment for data import and using those rates from there. Similarly, for data export, it's going to be using Arthur's skill for skill assignment for data export. Let's open up the role records and have a look at those values. So Arthur has a data export skill over here, which has $150 for the billable hourly rate and $75 for the cost hourly rate. And Omer's skill assignment for data import, the values are 175 and 100. Now, if you're using these values, we'll go back to the project and work on those. Schedule value billable and schedule value cost. So 2 hours times 150 plus 2 hours times 175. Those are billable hourly rates for Arthur and Umar. So that totals up to 650. And for the cost, 2 hours times 75 plus 2 hours times 100. That totals up to 350. Now we'll create a rate adjustment. This time we'll do one small change where we only enter in one date, one start date in this case, and we'll see how those values are affected. So we'll go back to the role records, go into the manage rates. Right, before we do that, we'll also add in the dates for the actions, because we're going to be using a specific date. So let's go into the create actions page. So I'll add in one date, that is one start date for one of the actions to be before the rate adjustment date, and one to be after the rate adjustment date, so that one of the scheduled values will using the rate adjustment, and one won't use the rate adjustment for the scheduled value. So let's say that the rate adjustment will start from the first and just go on indefinitely, so we won't specify any end date. So in this case, I'm going to say for Arthur's action over here, I'm going to say first 31st, and for Omar's action over here, we'll say first. And when we create the rate adjustment, we'll see how those values make a difference. Alright, going on to the skill-based tab here. So if I expand this from here, let's say the start date is on the 1st of September and no end date, because we want to use the rates that we just are about to enter from 1st September onwards. So I'm gonna add in 175 and 100, and that's for skill.export, and just click add. So it's created that rate adjustment record for us, and then we can just click save from here. Going back to the other role, skill-based tab. So again, similarly, I'm just going to expand this here. Start date is 1st September. Billable hourly rate is 200 and 125, and this one's going to be data import, and just click add. So that's good. We'll just click save from here. Now we'll go back onto the project and do a forced financials recalculation. So that's skill based over here. Save. So you'll see that those values have been updated. So it is calculating based on the for one action it's using the older rates, and for one action it's using the new rates, and that's because the start date for one of the actions is before the rate adjustment, while for the other action it is after the rate adjustment. And it would work similarly if you added only in end date for the rate adjustment, and you had the start date of the action to be before the end date of the rate adjustment. It would use the rates from the rate adjustment. But if you had the action starting from after the end date of the rate adjustment, it would use the original skill assignment rates. Okay, so now let's add a time log. One for Arthur. So this is after the 1st of September, so that's going to include the it's going to use the rate adjustment that we just created. So 1 hour, and this is going to be for Arthur. And let's log time. Similarly, we'll create another time log which falls in that date range. For Umar, 1 hour log time. it's done. Let's go back, refresh. So now that we've added the time log, so these values have been calculated for us. So that would be it's going to use the rate adjusted values. So if I open up the rate adjustment, go back here, refresh. So we've got two of these new rate adjustments over here. So it's gonna use these new adjusted values. So 200 times 1 plus 175 times 1, and that adds up to 375, and that's looking good over here. And similarly for the cost completed value, that's 225. So that's based on 125 times 1 plus 100 times 1, and that adds up to 225. And an important thing to keep in mind when creating rate adjustment records from the role record, this goes for both when creating the role-based rate adjustment or the skill-based rate adjustment. So if I were to go into a role record here, so you'll see that I've got billable hourly rate of 250 and a cost hourly rate of 100. And if I were to go into manage rates over here, and if I don't enter in any dates, not even one date, so if I leave both of these blank, so let's say I enter in 300 and 200 and just click add. So again, this validation in place so that if you don't enter in any dates, it's going to update these values. So if you update these values here, so 350 and 250, let's say, and click save, it's going to overwrite the original values, and it's not going to create rate adjustment records. So in this case, because it's the role-based tab, it's going to update the update these values on the role record. So 350 and 250, we'll see those on the role record now. So 350 and 250 are shown over here. Similarly, if you do that on the skill-based tab, the skill assignment values on the role record will be updated. So these values inside over here will be updated. And finally, let's talk about the skill-based override rate adjustment. So the skill-based override rate adjustment will only apply to specific projects. So we can open up the skill-based project, just open here. Yep. So let's expand this. So we've got actions starting from 31st August 2022, ending on 1st September. And we've got time logs. The latest time logs are in October. So what we can do is, let's take the scenario that we need to update the rates on this project, and just to make sure that it uses these new rates that we're just going to be adding in. There's two ways you can go about it. You can take the earliest start date. You can see that on the project, which is 31st August, and you can look at the time logs, which one is the latest time log. So October, 6 October, and you can create a rate adjustment record from the project. So skill-based override rate adjustment, and just enter in the start date from here and the latest time log date, so that the scheduled values and the completed values are all using those new rates. Or you can choose to create a rate adjustment record by not mentioning the start and end date, and because it's the skill-based override and not the skill-based or the role-based, it's not going to override the original values because this is from the project level. So if I were to open up the manage rates, so we're on the skill-based override tab because the project is skill-based, and that's why it's showing us this tab. And you see these default rates here. Some of them are from the skill assignments, if they have any skill assignments. If they don't, then it's showing the rates from the role record. Omar had the skill for assignment for data import, so we're going to update those rates from here. So let's say, so it's over here, 175 and 100. So let's say that's 200. Actually, let's increase that to 300, and this is, let's say, 175. For Arthur, he had data export, so let's say this is also 300, and this is 125. Once we click save, those rate adjustment records will be created. Let's go back here and refresh. So the skill-based override rate adjustment records have been created. One for Arthur, one for Umar, two different skills. So we added in 300 for both the billable hourly rates and 125 and 175. Now let's go back onto the project and have a look at those updated values. We'll just do a force financials recalculation just to make sure those values have been updated. Refresh. Yep. So for the scheduled value billable, so we had 2 hours times 300 for Arthur, plus 2 hours times 300 for Omar, and that's totaling to 1200. So that's good. Then we have the scheduled value cost. So that was 2 hours times 125 plus 2 hours times 175, and that's totaling to 600. Then we have the hours completed value billable, which is the 1 hour time log, and it's 300 plus 1 hour time log times 300. So both those rates the same. So that's totaling to 600. And the hours completed value cost is 1 hour's time, 1 hour times 125 plus 1 hour times 175, and that's totaling to 300, and that's coming up correctly. So that concludes the how-to video on managed rates and mission control. If you have any questions, you can reach out to us via support tickets or to the email mentioned here. We have a lot of resources, such as a very detailed user guide, a lot of training videos on our website, searchable knowledge base, as well as a learning portal. That's all for today, and have a good day.